Here's an episode with Steve Hanson we recorded talking all about November, making the most out of the later part when most people have given up. Really great conversation. Hope it helps you this season. Here we go. Steve, it's July, but we're going to pretend it's November.
Yep, it won't be long.
Yeah, it won't be long at all. First off, thanks for having us out here this past weekend. It's been really fun. Richard may say otherwise with his black eye. He shouldn't talk that way to you, huh?
Yeah, that'll be the last time he does that. So
we this is kind of with this going live in November, it's kind of it's like we're going to speak things into existence here for a minute.
Yep.
We were out on a new farm you bought. We hung a bunch of cameras, and then we did find a big hole with a side-by-side.
Yep, dropped right into it.
Yeah, and so we're doing the summer work now, but now hypothetically it's November.
Yep.
And I want to ask you, you have a lot of hunting experience. You were a guide in Alaska.
Sure.
A very just avid hunter and
Yep.
outdoorsman is how I would describe you. And you have helped a lot of people probably kill their best deer ever.
Yeah, for sure.
Like
that's part of being in Iowa. That's that's what we're here for.
Yeah. And so before we get into what we're going to talk about today, just go ahead and introduce yourself in case people haven't caught the Whitetail Cribs that we've done, the past episodes that we've done for the Exodus podcast and the Land podcast, or haven't seen your the TikTok where hunting mornings in October, which is apparently a highly debated topic.
Yep, that is funny how many follows that had. But no, my name is Steve Hanson. We kind of involved in all things with land and deer in southern Iowa here, and I work at Hawkeye United Country Real Estate. And then we have a guiding business, Straight Arrow Outfitters, as well.
Yeah.
So
you've been a kind of a guide for a very long time.
Long time, yep.
Yeah.
I think I started guiding in Iowa. I think it was in 92.
Oh, wow.
I think 91 was the first. 90 or 91 was the first year that non-residents were allowed to hunt.
Uh-huh.
So.
Wait,
yeah.
so non-residents couldn't even hunt Iowa?
Yeah, they didn't have a non-resident season. I believe it was 1990 when that started. So.
That's a fun piece of history.
Yeah, that is. A lot of people don't know that. And even take it back a step further, I don't even think they had a deer season until the late 70s.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that was that unusual to see deer around here. That's how different it is. So.
Yeah, now they're everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah, they're everywhere. Yeah, that's fascinating to see basically an entire industry from an animal that was not around here that long ago.
That is native, but had just been, kind of.
Why did you think the population exploded?
I think, there's just the farming and stuff like that finally brought them around. And I think they were finally probably regulating it. I think the numbers had been high historically. Without regulations, they were hunted almost to extinction.
Oh, wow.
And then, with proper game management and stuff, they were allowed to recover. And now, the biggest problem in a lot of areas is too many.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So with all of your experience as a guide and your whole Rolodex, I would say, are very, very serious whitetail hunters from a full spectrum. I would say some really – everywhere we went, like, oh, he's got two 200s.
Right.
It was almost a joke.
We seemed to run into just random people yesterday. Yeah. I mean, at the steakhouse, a friend of mine sat behind us, and I said, oh, he's killed two 200s. met another guy, oh, that's a 200 guy. And it's like – and that's part of the culture of living here. I mean, there's a lot of the most serious hunters on earth are right here.
Yeah. So. I mean, you look at people that have literally moved their life to live in this area to chase whitetails. Yep. And that's, the most dedicated you can be to design your
to move your life to be around that. Yep.
Yeah. And so that brings my question is, in your opinion, what mistakes are some of these better whitetail hunters making that keep them from being great? So this is maybe someone that's coming out here. Maybe they do okay in whatever state and they come to a different spot or something else that they're good but not great in terms of their success.
The single biggest thing I would say is people spend too much time hunting, even during the season, and don't reassume the role of scouting even in the season. Mm-hmm. If things aren't going right, you don't have the right wind. Some guys, and this is very typical, not that I'm picking on anybody because they're usually good hunters, but like we have guided a lot of guys from Pennsylvania, and it's just like they're bound and determined. They got to be in their stand dark to dark and sit there. That's just how they were brought up and how they were trained. And, my theory is always, there's times to do that once you really have done your intel and everything's on. But on a day when I guess my biggest thing would be overhunting on the wrong days.
Okay.
And
so explain what wrong days may be.
If we have if you have a week to hunt and you're, let's say you've got, November 5th to the 12th or 13th, and you look at the 7-day forecast and you say, okay, 2 of these days are going to be 75 degrees, that's warm for the rut. You don't want to be sitting all day those days. Maybe do a somewhat conservative morning hunt and then hunt an evening spot somewhere on a field edge where you are hunting, but you're primarily glassing or scouting. You don't pile into your best all day downwind of a, very tight bedding setup. That's not the day to do that. If in your forecast you have 2 days where the weather's going to be good, those are the days you go all in and go for that. And the biggest mistake I see, and most people, even people that have large farms, have a finite amount of good spots. So it's being disciplined enough to not be in a good spot on a bad day. That's the biggest thing. It seems like too many people ideas just, charge into the timber and sit there dark to dark on the wrong days. So
yeah. And I think part of that may be this whole, you have to be aggressive to kill big deer.
Right.
And then I think people forget the part where they scouted glass.
Yes. Yeah.
Have a methodical plan, and then they're aggressive.
Right. The aggressive is 10% of the total effort invested. You know, you don't just jump out of the truck the first day and barrel into the middle of the timber. And then, and the other thing I would say that a lot of the mistakes a lot of people make is, not spending the summer and stuff setting things up for success in the fall. Having a plan for this wind, have a plan for that wind, have conservative spots, aggressive spots, and know when to use them.
So really, I mean, it's just like anything. The more work you put into it with thought, the better success you ideally will have. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And so the two biggest things is hunting the best spots on bad days, and then also just being blindly aggressive without just because you're being aggressive.
And those would be the main ones. I mean, there's some others that I could definitely, relate to, but those would probably be the biggest ones.
What are some of the most effective hunters that have come out here to hunt? What do those guys have in common? Because you get I've never been around it, but I have to imagine you get the full sample of the white-tailed deer hunter.
Yep. I would say, knowing this because I did help guide for a friend years ago in Missouri where we didn't have the tag constraint. And I would say Iowa, even though we kind of are around a wide variety of hunting, we probably still have the upper 10% of the skill set because it takes somebody with some forethought and planning to put in for 5 or 6 years to draw their tag. Whereas in Missouri, people could buy a tag over the counter. And so you dealt with people from, no skill set to a very, a very high skill set for sure. So.
And so most of the guys that are coming out here are pretty well polished hunters.
I would say overall. They're above average hunters for sure.
What's one mistake that they have done under your guys' wing that you see? They're like, don't do this, and then they're like, but this is how we do it.
The number one thing that happens is people, getting down and tracking deer. That's the biggest one because they just can't wait. And we try to run a pretty strict protocol. Primarily because we recover the highest rate of deer by doing this. If we don't know exactly where the shot is, don't even go to the arrow. If the weather's good, back out. Let us, go through all the information you can give us, and then we'll make a plan on how to do it.
How long do you suggest to wait? And so let's just walk through this scenario because someone is listening to this in November. Maybe it already happened to them, or it's going to, or maybe it's a buddy that they're going to help. They have a buck come in. They shoot it, let's say, 25, 35 yards.
Right.
And it was in a thick brush. They shoot it. They don't know.
Right.
I hit him. I think I hit him. I saw him for a second. That's the bare minimum information you're rolling with.
Yeah. If that's the story, and if we got that information via text message or something where, somebody say, hey, what should I do? In that instance, I wouldn't even recommend going to look for the arrow. If this is let's assume it was a morning hunt. If it was a morning hunt or in the morning, I would, tell somebody, hey, sit there for an hour, quiet, pack up what you can without making a big disturbance, climb down, and go out 100% the opposite way of where you last knew that deer was quietly. And then I would probably, in a situation like that, give it 4 to 6 hours. Then we'd go in and try to find the arrow. Finding the arrow is going to tell us what kind of hit we have, if any. And then once we've, established what the hit was, then if it's a known to be gut shot, we would be waiting so many more hours before pursuing it. If it's good blood, then we'd probably take off at that point right after it. But too many people can't wait. They find the arrow. If they do go get the arrow, then they see some blood, then they want to walk, and then they want to walk,
and then they bump out his
then
first
you
bed.
bump them, and then the whole game changes.
Yeah.
So
Meaning that the likelihood of finding them just
yes, if it's a marginal hit, after that first bed, your chances of recovering that deer go way, way, way down. So
what about to circumnavigate that or avoid that? Do you have any advice for someone to take to heart right now in the moment of truth to make a good shot? Let's say they can't. There's no summer practice now because
right.
This is
yeah,
November.
you're already here. Yep.
So now, what do you? Is there a mental checklist you go through? Is there any tricks of the trade?
I mean, I think it's, I think that stuff just comes down to, unfortunately, somebody's experience level, because at that point, you're going to be depending on instincts to make the shot and stuff like that. And that's where I would say anyone that's going, and getting ready to go on a big hunt like Iowa, or maybe you're going out west or something. Like if you have the ability at home to spend some evenings trying to fill a few doe tags, that's the best. You know what I mean? Because it's the same thing, and just get used to that. And then the other thing is, and everybody knows they should do this, but just truly focusing on high percentage shots. If it's not right, don't take the shot. It's hard. I know it's hard not to, but if it's quartering towards or, something like that, just wait. More than likely a better opportunity is going to present itself. So
What's your bow hunting limit for shooting? How far?
Myself personally?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to use, like for deer, around here it's probably 40 yards, and for elk it's under 60.
Under 60.
I've literally passed up bulls at 61, 62 yards.
Really?
And shot them at 54.
Because they got in closer.
Yes.
So
Yep.
there's some
yeah, that's my own. I don't practice enough in my mind to shoot further than that. So just seems like a lot changes once you get beyond that. You're really, for me, and again,
the margin of error is
the margin of
way
error.
slimmer.
There's guys that are probably, more ethical taking an 80-yard shot than other hunters are really taking a 30-yard shot because of their skill set. So,
okay. Well, I think that's important. I think that's very important. What about shooting your bow in season?
That's absolutely.
Shoot your bow every day,
Yep.
almost still when you get back.
And like we were talking before about different groups of guys, and I had a family that hunted with me a lot, and this was back in the day when you could draw every other year or every third year.
Glory days.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? And they were from Wisconsin. They were very good hunters, but I always hunted with the dad, and there were two brothers, and then eventually as their sons became old enough, they would start to bring their sons. But the dad, everybody put all their hunting clothes on like you were going out for the day, ready, and everybody shot every morning in the truck lights. The kids, that was just, they did that every day, and I was like, that makes a lot of sense, because this is the gloves you're going to be wearing. You got a different hat on.
Yeah.
There's always some little thing that could be a big thing in archery. And I was like, that's pretty smart.
Yeah.
Like that level of commitment to it, to do that every morning as you went out. So,
well, the reality of it is I'm pretty hard on my stuff too. I mean, you
right.
don't know if your sight
Absolutely
gets bumped
not.
or a screw
So,
starts getting loose and
yes.
all these different things. And I think it's important to spot check throughout the entire season. So what about any specific advice for early November that you think, or what you have seen to be in a most effective strategy for shooting mature bucks too?
For hunting and harvesting mature bucks. I mean, the biggest one in that early November time is to recognize when scrapes are no longer important. I think a lot of people hunt scrapes longer into November than they really should. And then that first November 2nd, 3rd, 4th, something in there, rattling is still highly effective. I would recommend that. I'd say when they stop really hitting the scrapes, rattling's still going to be effective for 3 or 4 days. It seems like they're still on that before they go into full chase mode.
So break down what a setup would look like for that for the November 2nd, 3rd, or 4th with rattling. Morning, evening, are you set up? Let's break down the morning, then let's break down an evening set. So in the morning, what does that look like?
Yeah, like in the morning, you're going to be more likely in the timber, either really close to where they're bedding, obviously downwind of it, or in some type of a funnel leading to it. And if you're going to employ rattling as part of that strategy, try to hunt a stand or have a stand that has a significant terrain advantage. something that they can't get downwind
Yeah,
of you, like that pond.
The pond,
Like
or
that
those
pond
big ditches.
Yep, exactly. Having a setup like that's going to be a strong rattling setup. That's what you want to look for, where they can't get downwind of you and pick you off. So that would be the most important.
And are you rattling at hour after sunrise, or are you wait until like 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning?
No, my strategy's always been different on rattling like that. As soon as it's light enough that you can glass around and make sure there's nothing close enough to pick off your movement, that's when I would rattle. That's when everything in the woods can hear, everything in the woods knows, that's when they're the most attuned to their environment. The wind hasn't usually picked up by then. It's cooler yet. I would recommend, a strong rattling sequence right at first light. Then I'd probably let the morning play out, and then maybe, 2 other sets throughout the morning, an hour, hour and a half apart.
How long of a sequence do you
Not
suggest?
typically very long, 5 to 10 seconds, something. Yep. And then stop, and then a little bit, and then put them away. So that's and then that would lead to another thing. We've had a lot of people, you try to coach someone on this. If they haven't seen it work, and most people from other places haven't.
I've never had success.
Right.
I've rattled in like 3-year-olds.
Sure.
I've never rattled in a mature buck.
Right. And that's what, a lot of people do that. Then they're standing there, still have their antlers in their hand.
Put those
and all
suckers up.
Yeah, put them up and be ready. You don't have to clip your release on, but you want to be ready because, they have an uncanny ability of knowing exactly where that sound came from.
Yeah.
And they can be at 15 yards and they're looking for you. You won't be able to do much at that point because you're pinned, and then you've missed your opportunity.
Okay,
so.
So rattle, grab your bow.
Yep, grab your bow, at least be ready so that you don't have to get something out of your pack or hang. People always just don't have a place to hang their antlers. Yep. And that's the other thing. If you're going to employ rattling, I'd put an extra bow hook in.
Yep.
So when you rattle, you can hang them up kind of quickly. They're right there. They're not in your way, and just be ready to go. So.
Man, I'm getting excited.
Yeah,
I
know.
Tough time to be talking
it
about
is.
This in July.
So it's a good thing elk hunting is September. Otherwise, it'd really be tough.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, so that second, third, fourth, and then for the evening hunts, I assume, are you downwind of primary food source?
Yeah, that's kind of the time of year when we transition away from food plots. But those days there, we still probably would be field edge or close to field edge hunting on the on or close to the food sources. What's going to happen is once you get into that 5th, 6th, something in there, once they really start chasing, those does do not want to go to the food plots. They're going to get harassed, and that's not the time to be sitting on the field edge. So it's important to try to pay attention to what phase the rut's in, and know what you're make sure you're not sitting. And it bothers a lot of times guys like, well, aren't you guys, you got all these food plots. Can we hunt the food plots? I'm like, no, we don't want to go there at all. But it's not very long. It'd be a week, maybe a week, 8 or 9 days. And then those does will go back to feeding and as we get in the later part of the rut. But there is a good week to 10 days where that's not the place to be.
So, and where do you need to be in those evenings then?
Well, once it gets into that phase, morning or night, just hard rut funnels, big time terrain funnels. That's going to be, because at that point, it's almost just a function of putting in the most time in the best funnel and a place. When you pick a spot for those days of the rut, I'm going to say the 5th, 6th up until whenever lockdown occurs, your true rut funnel spots. I'd pick a spot, when you get in them, but it's make sure it's a spot where you feel you can have an opportunity. Like if it's awkward and you think, well, they'd have to stop right there or right there, that's
like
not
too
the
tight a window.
Yeah, too tight of windows, not pruned out well enough. That time of year, they're going to be moving. They're not going to follow any one specific.
Reality.
Yeah, you want to be able to, have a good areas to shoot for sure. So not really constricted. Like early season on a food plot, you could have real tight cover, small windows to shoot. They're going to come and feed. You'll probably get an opportunity. During the rut, they're going to be moving fast. They're not going to stop where you want them. You want a good lot of open shooting lanes.
That's a good piece of advice. I think a lot of people probably cost themselves opportunity where they picked the right spot, but it wasn't trimmed out.
It wasn't trimmed out well enough, or they were overly worried about cover and not shooting. At that time of year, I would worry more about the ability to shoot, less about the cover.
Okay.
So
yeah, that's good advice. What about and this is an open-ended question for the entire month of November. A lot of guys talk about midday movement. What have you seen over the years with all the sample size of hunters, and then also your personal experience?
Wherever the full moon falls during November, we will see the most midday movement. I would say if you happen due to your work schedule or just the weather or whatever, if you have to be rut hunting during the full moon, I would highly encourage you to hunt, midday. I mean, that's when it becomes all day sits are almost a prerequisite for rut hunting.
Interesting. So I just pulled this up. November 27th is
Okay.
the full moon, and then October 28th is the full moon.
Okay. That October 28th will be good. We do good the last week of October on a full moon always. It's counterintuitive, but we always do. I don't have any idea why.
So when you say
But we don't tend to hunt all day then. That's not an all-day movement time because it's not quite in the rut yet. That's still pre-rut.
Yep.
So
when you said that week, are you saying like 3 days before, 3 days after?
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So that'd be right there to the end of Halloween.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've learned that over the years because, Iowa, we only draw a finite number of bow hunters.
Yes.
And they, people are always super focused on the moon or anything that they feel giving them edge. And guys that are always considering late October are always a little questioning if that's their best choice. They will usually avoid it if it's full moon.
And you think that?
And then we're here hunting for ourselves because there's nobody here, and it's like, why isn't, you know what I mean? So I've learned that over the years, and I'm not scared anymore to recommend that to people because I've seen that week on a full moon be phenomenal many, many times.
Really?
Yep.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think it must be something to do with that starting to trigger the rut, and that that is one of the things that gets everything in motion for the fall.
Yeah.
So
the moon is maybe as controversial as hunting mornings in October.
Right, or mechanical broadheads. If you bring up the moon, that's definitely one of those things you could talk for hours and hours about.
Yeah, that's interesting. So
and that's full moon meaning lunar phase.
Okay. You
know what I mean? There's a whole nother set of things around lunar positioning. You know what I mean? Which I do believe there is something to it. I haven't studied it enough to really have a formal opinion on it.
I'm usually hunting the whole season.
Right.
But
and weather usually trumps everything.
Yeah.
If you get cold weather, it's going to be good.
Yeah. So you're saying if we do get a cold front during the week of that October 28th,
it'd be very good. Very, very good.
Arguably one of the best weeks of the year.
And I've had that happen, and then I've had that first full week in November be slow. And it's truly one of those times when you're going, you should have been here last week, and you truly should have, know.
And I think that's just the I call it the whitetail roller coaster because that's what it is.
Yep.
And I think that if people that missed that last week of October,
right,
they're like, oh, it's only going to get better.
Right.
And that might be false hope, would you say?
Yes, false hope many times. Yep. Because you'll get a big push of rut activity, maybe a little on the early side, and then it kind of goes into a lull for a little bit, and then it, might take off again. So, but it's not a steady progression upwards all the time. You might get a spike up, and then a gradual down, and then a spike up again.
What about, we talked about that. I mean, I guess we talked about the 5th through the 12th kind of, and we talked about the first couple days of November. I mean, what day has the most mature bucks fallen around here in November?
Well, it's
or what's the common theme of that day, I guess?
The data would lead you to believe, and probably rightly so, that like 5th, 6th, 7th, that would be it. But we and everyone else are in the woods that day.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So
it's like a must-sit day.
Yes, so it's almost like a self-fulfilling thing because so many people are hunting, so many bucks end up getting killed.
Yep.
I would love to know the math on like a per capita, like, okay, per 100 bow hunters in the woods, whether it was October 28th.
And
you know what I mean?
That's a very interesting
if you
thought,
did the math that way, I think people would really come away from it with a different thought because, like around here, there's no one in the woods. Local people and stuff, maybe a few, but very few people until whatever that first Saturday in November. That's when people are in the woods like crazy through that next week. So of course, a high percentage of the bucks are going to be killed because most of the people are hunting. So
that's an excellent thought. I've never really looked at it that way.
Yeah.
The amount of mature buck shot per hunter's out.
Yep.
That's a fact someone needs to figure out.
Yeah.
And I think you're probably right. I think it probably is more in late October, like for high-end deer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And I don't know if you want to go into the later part of November at all, because that's another time we really feel strongly about, being successful.
Yeah, we'll get to that because I want to. Cool. I'm just mentally working through the.
All right. Yeah. No, I know you got your plan. So
just talking through there. So let's say the first chunk of that time frame where activity is very high. What about hunting the lockdown phase of the rut? I mean, if someone's out here, or they are, let's say they're in Kansas or maybe Illinois or Wisconsin or wherever they're at for this November, what is a viable lockdown strategy?
You know, the only successful tactic for lockdown is just to grind it out, kind of hunting as close as you can to bedding cover. You know, try to get in somewhere pretty close to bedding areas, hoping a few does.
Just takes one doe.
Just takes one doe, and, you know, just be in there, and then it's just a patience game for sure. So, because you want to be there when it breaks too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We were just talking about how you talk to different people, and one part is like, oh my gosh, it's on fire, and you guys aren't seeing anything, and then it's like a day lag.
Yeah, like it wouldn't surprise me at all for like where that Decatur County farm is. Their rut comes in a day sooner or a day later than the peak, you know, then things really start happening here. I mean, that happens every year for us. So there is something to it. I don't know what exactly triggers it one place over another, but it does.
So I would say stay in touch with people in the general vicinity and area.
Yeah,
I think
and anymore, it's never been easier, you know, with Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
When you open up, there's 17 new giant
exactly, yeah. It's like, it's on in Illinois or it's on in Iowa. So.
Yeah. What about, which talking about real time and that type of deal, but how are you using cell cameras during the rut? Because I could see, I mean, they kind of seem like a double-edged sword.
It is a double-edged sword, but it definitely can be pretty effective, because if you have a target buck on its feet, on a farm or on a part of a farm, you know, you want to be in there. That's probably the biggest time where cameras could really sway success more than almost any other time. The only other time that I would say they probably have as much or more weight is on scrapes.
Okay.
You know, if you get cameras on a scrape at the right time and that buck becomes pretty predictable, I mean, you can arguably hunt a scrape somewhat like a bait pile.
Honestly.
You know, and that's a time where a camera would alert you to that, you know, especially a cell cam where you get the data, you know, fairly in real time.
How could someone do you think that maybe we rely too much on cell cameras during the rut?
Yes, because like the reason I brought up the part about the scrapes is that's information that buck's likely coming back.
He's in the area. He's probably not coming from far.
Getting a picture of a big mature buck on its feet during the rut is great, but he could be a mile away
literally
within an hour.
Yeah.
And then, but, you know, so it is information to have, but, you know, I wouldn't run to that spot. You're kind of hunting a lagging indicator, so to speak. You're hunting behind him at that phase. So, but at least it's good to, you know, the other thing it teaches you, he's still alive. He's still in the area.
Yeah.
You know, those are all, I would use that as a primary takeaway. I wouldn't sit there thinking, oh, he's going to be right back by. I would say, hey man, he's alive. He's on his feet. He hasn't been spooked.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those are all, you know, important. You know, that's good enough to know you need to be in there hunting. So.
Yeah. And so do you think, let's say someone listening to this right now, they're hunting a buck, or maybe they have 2 or 3 target bucks and they haven't been on cell camera. What is your advice for that person?
They haven't been.
They haven't.
Not.
They were on there, and then they got a night picture, let's say November 3rd. And now it's November 10th, and they're like, oh, I don't know what to do. I'm on vacation this week. That's the buck I really want to shoot.
Yeah, I would, whatever intel you have up to that point, I would still hunt based on your plan.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I don't think I would change anything at that stand.
Scout probably more.
Yeah, maybe if anything, if you've lost track of them, try to hunt spots where you can glass from, like that Decatur County farm. You know, glassing is going to be a super important part of that whole process, because you're going to be hunting and able most likely to see, you know, a pretty good ways.
Yeah, you get up on the north part there.
Exactly. Yeah. You'd be able to see a lot of country, and you could be hunting one spot, but maybe watching another draw, and just, you know, invest some energy into that, or making sure that you can see a little bit. That's a good point. That's definitely important too. So
how far do you see bucks travel during the rut?
Quite a ways. Like when we've managed multiple farms in an area, but they're not contiguous, you know, we've picked up the same buck the next day 3 miles away. We found a big buck dead. Actually, a guy that was mowing hay for us found a big buck dead that we were after last year, and some people we know had a picture as far north as we know he went, and we found him dead 4 miles away.
Wow.
Yep. And amazing cover in between. It wasn't it was a cover intensive area. There would be no reason on the surface that we could see that he would have abandoned one area and gone to the next. And you know, he was over 200 inches. I mean, he was and one of the guys sent me a picture from 2018 or 19, and he was big then.
Wow.
So he was a 7 or 8 year old deer.
Sometimes it seems like those really big ones that are that random.
I know.
It's almost people like. Yeah, it's kind of an oxymoron because you think that they would die sooner, but then if he's 3 miles one way one day and 4 miles the next day.
That's
and even the huff buck too. They talk about how far that
right.
deer went. It was like 7 miles.
Yep, he traveled a bunch.
Do you see also where deer are just tighter than heck in a little area too?
Oh yeah,
like this deer should be pretty easy to kill.
Yeah, and I always think in that deer that we found dead this year kind of changed the thought on that, but. Typically, the older, more mature they get, their home range seems to shrink. Mm-hmm. They find a place that they're comfortable in, and then that becomes their zone, And
in that scenario, do you feel that you are afforded the opportunity to be a little bit more aggressive too, knowing it might be harder to kick them out, or do you think that's a fallacy?
Yeah, you'd still want to be pretty careful because obviously he's a mature deer, and the the smaller the area he's in, the more intimately he knows it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think that's part of the reason that maybe they do that is that they know how the thermals work. They, all those things help protect them. Whereas if they're wandering around in country they're somewhat unfamiliar with, they're more likely to enter into funnels or stuff like that at the wrong wind just because they don't know it,
What about, I'm play devil's advocate here. So I'm just thinking as a person.
Yep.
When you go around somewhere where you're comfortable with, you're usually just more relaxed and
that's true. Your guard would be down.
Yeah, I'm not paying attention.
That's a good point.
And then when you're going to somewhere new, you're like, oh man,
right.
I need to pay attention. Seatbelt on.
Right. Yeah. I guess
I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, I could see both sides of that. I mean, I use the argument of the other side. It's like, if you walk into somebody's house that you've never been to, you look at the furniture, everything's the way it is. If you walk into your house and the couch is 2 feet to the left,
like,
it'll catch your eyes
yeah.
instantly.
Yep.
And that's the analogy I've always used.
Must have bumped it.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's it would be interesting, and maybe that's behavior based too with bucks.
Right.
Too.
Yeah, and everyone's different, so they're all going to have their own take on it.
Yeah. So as we're rolling through here, it's November 15th.
Okay.
You still haven't filled your tag.
Right.
Should you be nervous? Should you panic?
For me, I would say no, because you're getting into some of the days that I like the very best. 15th, that time's pretty good, but you get around that 18th, 19th, right up until about Thanksgiving. Those are really good days.
Yeah.
And 90% of the opportunities we get at that time are in the evenings on food sources.
Mm.
And it's like those more mature bucks, as a number of does that haven't been bred, whittles down, they're coming to that as much for food as they are to keep checking new does. And we had a really amazing night. It's been years ago. I think it was 2010 or something, but we only had a couple guys hunting. They were people we'd told to come back because they'd had tougher hunts in the main part of the rut. So they were here in that, I think it was the 18th or 19th or sometime right around there. And we were also hunting for ourselves, and I shot the 198. One of the other hunters shot a 176 and a 167. So there's 5 guys out that night, and we shot
we
got all 3 of them.
Yeah.
That was the amazing thing.
Yeah. What was the food source you guys were on then?
I was on a corn food plot. One guy was on and 2 of the other guys were on brassica plots.
Really?
Yep. And geographically, we were in 2 separate counties, but probably from north to south, we're probably 50 miles apart.
Oh, wow. So not even the same neighborhood.
We weren't even in the same neighborhood or same thing, but it was like your perfect day where, in the morning it was 55 degrees, and by 7 o'clock that night it was 22.
Ooh, yeah.
So it was a high pressure cold front. It was the classic day.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's okay. So if your tag is still in your pocket the 15th, and keep grit down because the next cold front might be it.
Yep, and I like the predictability fact of them being huntable on the food
mm-hmm.
sources. We're always food heavy. Mm-hmm. Like we do tons and tons of food plots, so we have a lot of different options for that type of hunting. So I'm always confident on that. Mm-hmm. It's pretty strong. And then you can still, that's a time I wouldn't recommend sitting all day. No way. I would sit, go out, sit till late morning, 11:30, come out, go back out about 1 to a food source. But,
mm-hmm.
Hunt your traditional rut funnel areas in the morning and then go right to food sources in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
So.
What about the month of December? Not to throw things off, but let's say you get through the month of November and you're at that point, is this just food and cold fronts?
Yep. Yeah, for late season.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Iowa, our archery season goes out for the first 2 weeks of December, starting the first Saturday. That's gun season.
Yeah, true.
We're actually not even allowed to bow hunt.
Yeah.
Even if you have a gun tag, believe it or not, you can't.
Wow.
Yeah, you can't bow hunt on a gun tag, on a first or second gun season tag. So, and the gun season part of Iowa. But if we're focusing this on the archery side of things, I would, as soon as the season opens back up. So say you're out for both of the gun seasons, and as soon as our late season, which is late muzzleloader and late archery, they're concurrent, same season, I would start hunting, but I would be very conservative in how you hunted and wanting always to have the ability to glass the plots. Mm-hmm. Because if I'm after a target buck, first and foremost, I'd want to know he's still alive. Now, I wasn't archery hunting, but I had that same scenario on a farm that I had permission to hunt from a landowner that we managed land for, and I went out hunting right after gun season, first day of late muzzleloader. I was muzzleloader hunting, but had no idea what there was, and I really went to glass and just brought my muzzleloader. Ended up shooting him that night. Hadn't seen him since October. No pictures, no nothing. So, and he was a nice one. I mean, he's mid upper 170s. One I haven't got.
It cracks me up.
Haven't got him mounted, but
yeah. There's Rich and I were listening to the Meat Eater trivia on the way. How there's the Shelby Index. This is the Iowa Index.
The Iowa Index.
It was a good deer. It was
a nice one.
Right. Deer. Anywhere else in the country, it's like it was
like
giant.
That's the one.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's really cool. So, if you could only hunt 1 week of the year, only 1 week for whitetails, what week are you picking?
Mine would be the week prior to Thanksgiving.
The week prior to Thanksgiving.
Yep. By the time you get to the Saturday, Sunday after Thanksgiving, depending on how the calendar falls, that's usually getting pretty late, and we're almost post-rut by then. Mm-hmm. But whatever time that 15th, 16th to 21st, 22nd, whatever's in there. And the reason I say that, and some of the landowners that have owned farms out here that we help with for multiple years that run cameras every year, most of the true high-end mature bucks are daylight during those times. It's not the peak of the rut. It's not all the deer on their feet, but it's the most, like the ones we're after, those high-end bucks, that tends to be when most of them are on their feet.
Interesting. So I'm going to look at the calendar just for fun.
Yeah.
So the Thanksgiving's on the 23rd then of this year?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it'll be good. Like that 25th would still be good. By the 26th, 27th, it's going to start to slow down and really crash off the earth.
So that 19, 20, 21, 22,
yep,
23,
that week
24,
right there would be the week. If we were sitting down to figure out our days off, that would be what I would take. So.
Yeah, that's one of the really cool things about Iowa too, because our Illinois shotgun season would be the 17th, 18th, 19th.
Yep.
And then it does.
Right. See, and I actually learned that, even though I didn't realize I learned that. I learned that growing up in Illinois because we hunted, like we were talking about some of the spots that I hunted, those never had gun seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we just figured, and those were the best times.
Yeah.
We'd see all our big ones then.
Yeah. Well, I think as an Illinois guy, I need to find a better spot where there's.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I don't want to have like the lose. That's what you need to do.
Right.
So if that's I'm gonna be in Iowa.
Yeah. Hopefully you're all done by then.
Yeah, we'll see.
We can redo this podcast and tell your story.
Yeah, we'll do that. Well, all right. This is how long are you going to be hunting in New Mexico this year for elk hunting?
I'm probably the only guy that is dumb enough to do this, but I can start hunting September 1st on my tag, but we kind of have a tradition, and I've got more and more of our landowner and friends. I've gotten interested in this, so we're going to actually do a dove hunt on September 1st. So I'll probably dove hunt the 1st, maybe the morning of the 2nd, and then head for New Mexico. And then my only time constraint on the other end is I have to help guide. When I say guide, it's not a job. I'm helping friends. And some of the friends that I'm guiding, their hunt in Arizona starts on the 15th. So I have to be in elk camp at the latest the evening of the 14th to be ready to help them on the morning of the 15th. So that gives me, 10, 12 days there. Okay. So
would you rather shoot an elk on the second day or last day, last minute?
If it's a big elk, I'm going to say if it's the one I'm after, in this case, I would rather shoot it early because that means more time to scout with my friends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I just go from elk hunter to elk scouter, guide guys, so it's all elk hunting to me. So it'll be neat there because I'm hopeful that we have the ability on that New Mexico hunt to hunt water a little bit in the evenings because I do kind of like doing that, and it's highly effective if it's not overrun with people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you find a water source, that's a great way to get opportunities most years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the mental thing of like, come out to Iowa.
Right.
Do you want to experience the full November down to the wire, or like hunt the cold fronts in October, ride the roller coaster of whitetails in November, and then connect with one later in that month? Or kill early. I don't know the answers.
There's no good answer, but I do know that bow hunting big deer is tough.
It is, yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's
people
like,
just think Iowa, and I'm sure you get this
right.
with all the people. They just almost expect it, and they don't think they have to work for
Yep.
it. And I'm sure that's wrong.
Yeah, I used to keep track of it, and if I had a deer that I wanted to hunt, and working around the guiding schedule and other stuff, I'd hunt a lot early season. I hunt a lot in that later November time.
Mm-hmm.
But I usually figured out, and I would call, when I say days, I'm meaning hunts. So if I hunt a morning and an evening, that would be 2 hunts.
Okay.
Or 2 days, so to speak.
Uh-huh.
My average usually was around 22 to 25 days.
To kill a specific
weapon. Yeah. Before I had got an opportunity. Like that's before I had a true good shot, or, if I missed or something, then I still counted it that way. But, so that's, Yeah. And that opportunity could come early. I mean, I shot, that one that we usually have in here that's outside right now, that big drop tine one.
Yeah.
I shot that early in October that year. And then, it can happen anytime from the first minute you're there. So, and hopefully the cameras answer a lot of that for us.
Yeah.
Like a true big deer that's somewhat patternable in early October, I don't think I'd turn that down.
yeah, that would be foolish. What's a November pep talk for someone? They're
really the biggest thing it's and we'll do this will be plays into the elk hunting or probably any hunting, but just be ready for the mental grind.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like when once by morning 3 when you're starting to get
take
tired,
the rose-colored glasses off.
Yes, you're in Iowa, but you're still going to have tough days. But I think that's why it's super important not to burn yourself out on the bad days, and use the long-term weather forecast to figure out what your strengths are, what days are going to be the good days, and save your energy for those. Don't burn yourself out. We had a guy, and he's a good friend of mine, finally retired and moved out here to Iowa. He'd bought a farm from me, and we'd helped him set it all up. And the first year he could do it, he came out in October and literally like hunted every day and like burned himself out, like crazy. I'm like, what are you doing? The farm's burned out, you're burned out.
Yeah.
This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But he was so excited to be in Iowa that that's what he did,
Stick it out, ride the wave.
Yep. And if you're so fortunate that you have the ability to, hunt the true peak weather days, that's truthfully the answer. Like, your cold fronts and stuff like that.
Are you a big pressure guy?
High pressures, it's a big deal. That's definitely part of it. And I think, the pressure and the temperature sort of go hand in hand.
Sure.
We don't usually get really high pressure in the fall and hot weather. You know what I mean? Usually high pressure means a cold front. So the two go hand in hand. So
absolutely. I always remind myself too, in the month of November, especially, and even late October, This day is only going to be here one day this year.
Right.
Like if November 7th is your favorite day, it's only one
That's
day
one
of the
day.
entire year. And then if you look at it, how many November 7ths
do you have in your life? Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so really cherish it, enjoy it, and roll with the punches. And I think that's always my mindset.
Yep. That's a good way to look at it.
Awesome. Well, Steve, thank you so much. And we'll, depending on when this goes live, we'll have to give like maybe a prelude or something like that.
Yeah, hopefully we can, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, so I'll just leave this. I already shot a giant.
Yep.
I shot a giant late October during the week that Steve said I would.
But here's the story.
Yeah, so thank you so much. Where can people follow along with what you have going on?
The best place is probably Instagram. Just my name, Steve Hanson III. And you can find us at Hawkeye United Country in Albia.
Awesome.
So